Hello, my name is Dale DuFay. I'm going to narrate this video for Mary Hall. Previously, the video I narrated was about Antarctica and how it possibly, or apparently, was in the temperate zone at one point because the melting ice is revealing artificial structures. So you have to wonder. But many of you had questions about the expanding Earth theory that I brought up. And so let's go make this video about expanding Earth theory. First of all, where did the theory come from? It was postulated by O.C. Hilgenberg in Germany. I believe it's that gentleman there. And here you can see they have models of what they believe is the expanding Earth theory. And this was back in the 1930s. A good 40 years before plate tectonics was even understood. In the 1970s, it was starting to be understood. And here we can see their model. You can't really see, I believe that's Antarctica here. You can see it's clearly in the temperate zone, the equator. The equator would have always been in the temperate zone. Now, on these models, they have the Earth still tipped off its axis. But no doubt during Pangea, the Earth's axis was straight up and down and not tipped 23 degrees. So there would have been polar ice caps, without a doubt, on both poles. And that's where all the water came from as the Earth, grows as it ages. Here it is currently. And, here I'll even show you another model which talks about how long ago. Here it's 180 million years ago, Pangea. And you can see there is no water whatsoever. And you can see Antarctica here and very close to the temperate zone. And then here it's Jurassic period, 135 million years ago, and Cretaceous. And then you can see the water adding to the Earth. But again, these models don't show polar ice caps, which there had to be if you think about it. Because regardless of what size the Earth, is or was during its evolution, there had to be polar ice caps. Let's just say that the axis was straight up and down. Then the poles, regardless of what stage of evolution, would have never seen the sun. So that's where the basically ice accumulated and supplied the water for the oceans as the Earth expanded. But that is something that was postulated, in the 1930s by these German geologists, and well before plate tectonics was understood. Now we know here's a model of Pangea that they think what happened, and again, geologists assume the Earth remained the same size, but there's no argument that the Earth was in Pangea, but it certainly wasn't like this. Of course, all the continents were together, but there was no water at that time during Pangea. I'm a firm believer, and this is exactly what it was like. And apparently, there was life on these Earths, during Pangea, even while the dinosaurs were on the Earth. Again, because we could see this structures, artificial structures on Antarctica. And we can clearly see it's far from the pole. It's very close to the temperate zone, which is always, the temperate zone will always be in the equator area and above and beyond, up to the polar ice caps, which no doubt existed. Again, here they're showing, in the modern times, of course, Antarctica is on the very south pole, along with a lot of ice. Now, this is something I want to bring up also. Again, here's their model that they came up with. It's pretty accurate. Again, here you see Antarctica here in the temperate zone in Pangea. But once in a while, when I do a video for Mary, I talk about the Mandela effect, and her channel doesn't cover the Mandela effect. But the question I have to those of you who understand, of course, the Earth is like this. It's always been like this, except for in recent times, of course. But, back when it was Cretaceous, Jurassic, and Pangea, you know, the question I have is, does anybody remember the Earth being larger? That's the Mandela effect question. Of course, it's not. It's 24,800 miles in circumference. But does anybody remember it being much larger than that? That's the question, Mandela effect question. But it's because of the Mandela effect that I firmly believe that this is exactly what happens. The expanding Earth theory is totally exactly what happens. And here we could see an area on Earth where geologists have no argument where the Earth separates, and this is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. There's no doubt it separates, and here's an article from in Wikipedia about the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and it talks about, this is the amazing thing right here, the ridge has an average spreading rate of 2.5 centimeters a year. That's 1 inch a year. Think about that. So when let's just say it goes all the way up into Iceland here, you can see it. The ridge actually goes all the way to the north, 90 degrees, past 90 degrees north, and all the way almost to Antarctica, and then kind of veers off here. But this ridge literally separates 1 inch a year. Now think about that. So I'm 63 years old, so in my lifetime, this ridge has expanded over 5 feet. But of course, that's infinitesimal compared to, what in our eyes it is. Even though that's, 5 foot separation in a lifetime, it still takes, literally 63,360 years to go 1 mile. And we could see that it's 3,000 miles across here. And that's another Mandela question. Does anybody remember this being much further, from North America to Europe? The distance being much, much greater than it is here. Here it's a mere 3,000 miles. But still, it took, again, that correlates with the model. And the model that those German geologists made 40 years before they even knew there was plate tectonics. But it sums up perfectly. If you did the math, and this is 3,000 miles across, and it spreads 1 inch per year, it literally took 190 million years, a little over 190 million years for this separation to occur since its Pangea point. So that's, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. It's amazing when you think about it. And these guys thought about it, knew about it before they understood plate tectonics. Now, of course, most geologists assume the Earth has been this size all the time, and that there's, of course, there's the Mid-Atlantic Ridge that spreads, but they assume that there's other tectonic plates that are, they mesh into each other, subduction zone. But that's not the case. There are some fault lines, of course, that rub side to side, like the San Andreas fault line, but it always still separates at the fault. So every fault line is separating, and geologists, can agree that it does here. And there's evidence right in Iceland. You can actually go into this area right here, and this is where the Mid-Atlantic Ridge gap reaches land in Iceland. So this is constantly separating 1 inch every year. And in my lifetime, 5 feet. So, here's another expanding Earth model that shows the Earth very small and gradually growing as it ages. And another important thing to realize too is not only does the Earth grow as it ages, but it ventures out the galactic arm. So here's Mandela effect question number 3. Does anybody, of course, here's our current location within the Milky Way galaxy. There's no disputing that. But does anybody remember being on the outer tip of the Sagittarius arm, the solar system, with a much, much larger Earth? That's Mandela question number 3. So it's almost like the Mandela effect is vindicating the expanding Earth theory, but the geologists don't realize that the Earth's actually ventured out on the arm as well, because the galaxy is constantly growing. This is not a massive black hole. This is a massive white hole that's constantly generating and creating material. I always liken it to a welder. When the arc welders, the massive amount of electricity bonding two pieces of metal together, it sparks and all that matter. That's exactly what's happening in the galactic center. So it's always creating matter, and as it's pushing the Earth out to the galactic tips where they calve. Now that's another, again, the Mandela effect has vindicated the expanding Earth theory. Because if those of us, some of you may be affected with the Mandela effect, and you can recall the Earth being larger and the solar system being, some 70,000 light years from where it is here. So and much larger Earth. So to me, that vindicates the expanding Earth theory. And of course, the astrophysicists assume that these galaxies are colliding, and that's not what's happening at all. They are calving. So, of course, it's a front to the Big Bang theory, but it's obviously the opposite. We live in an inverted society, and everything we're told is opposite. The Earth grows as it ages. It's infinitesimal. We don't see it in a lifetime, but perhaps now with the satellites and everything circling the Earth and getting measurements, they'll eventually realize that it is indeed growing. So it's a pretty interesting thought. It's something that's been postulated for many decades, and of course, it's not accepted by academia. Geologists now always, again, assume the Earth has always been the same size. They agree on Pangea, but it's not, it's not, staying the same size. There's no doubt, again, about Pangea. I think Liver had that model. But let me find it here. They always assume it stayed the same size, Let's see, where is it? Where is that? Boy, it just disappeared. There it is. But, there's no question about Pangea, but the Earth was not this big when Pangea occurred. It was very small, probably the size of Mercury. So, then again, that was like 180, 190 million years ago. It took that long for this separation here to occur, this mid-Atlantic ridge. So, if we can even go on Google Earth and check this out. Here's the mid-Atlantic ridge here. It goes all the way, here's 90 degrees north, right here. And right there, I believe, is 90 degrees north. And the ridge goes beyond it. And all the way down, it's true, this is up north, all the way through Iceland, and all the way down to the South Atlantic, through the North Atlantic into the South Atlantic, all the way virtually almost to the 90 degrees south here. You could see it coming right there, ending right there, and there's Antarctica. So there's no argument that that's spreading, but they don't, they assume that the other major fault lines in the Pacific Ocean are subduction zones, but that's not the case. It's constantly growing. That's why we have volcanoes that are constantly adding land masses in the oceans and gaining, like Mount Etna in Italy, in Sicily. That's constantly adding material to the Earth, just like all volcanoes are. So, now that here's Mandela question number 4. Does anybody remember a continent on the North Pole? Obviously, there isn't. I'm not saying, and you don't need to answer if you don't remember this. Of course, you remember everything as it is, but some people that are affected with the Mandela effect recall a continent on the North Pole called Antarctica. and it was covered in ice, much like Antarctica is. Several miles of ice. See, there's 90 degrees north right there. Several miles of ice, just like it is in Antarctica, the South Pole. But yeah, that's the question. Does anybody remember Antarctica? I think I asked that a time or two in other videos. But again, Mary doesn't cover the Mandela effect, although she's affected with it. It has those of you who are not familiar with the Mandela effect, it has a lot. It has everything to do with memory, what we remember. I certainly personally don't remember the Earth being this small. I mean, it's remarkable. Let's even do a measurement. Some of you may be surprised at how small it is. Let's get on 90 degrees north, which I believe is right about there. Let's add this point and go all the way to the South Pole. It should be 12,400 miles, which would make a 24,000 mile circumference. And here we could see, we try to get the maximum right there. 12,412 miles from 90 degrees north to 90 degrees south. I remember personally that distance being much greater, and a massive ice caps on the North and South Pole with a continent on the North and South Pole. There was Arctica and Antarctica. But yes, the Earth does grow as it ages. The Mandela effect has vindicated this. And also, you know, it's obvious that it does. There's no doubt. Of course, in a lifetime, geologists could never, even if they were making measurements, would never be able to realize it's growing. It may take geologists several generations with modern equipment and satellites and whatnot for measuring the Earth that they'll be able to realize, and thereby totally vindicating, these guys that's postulated this long ago. They even made these models. These are pretty cool, made out of paper mache, but they still exist, and they are being vindicated here. Totally vindicated. Mr. Hilgenberg, look at Berlin, 1933. Already had postulated this, something that's an actual reality. And again, I could say this I never would have even, dreamed about expanding Earth theory if it wasn't for the Mandela effect, because the Mandela effect's proving that there's Earths that are upwards of 4 times larger than this Earth. Of course, this Earth has always been like this as long as humans can remember. But I remember personally, and some of you may as well. But of course, a lot of you are not, because the Mandela effect seems to be only affecting a small percentage of the population, but yet millions of us. So hopefully that, it's an actual theory. It's been around for, going on 90 years now. And again, I personally believe in it because I've experienced it, and I'm not a geologist. It's the Mandela effect that has vindicated its expanding Earth theory. So if any of you, have any questions about the Mandela effect, I have a channel that Mary will put a link to. It's called The Mandela Effect Equals Knowledge. And maybe you can get some answers there. At this time, I'm not taking any comments on that channel, and I'm very sorry about that. But there is a lot of hatred when it comes to the Mandela effect. There's a lot of it. So I had to turn the comments off. So with that, I thank you for watching, and we'll talk at you later.